Divorce happens. In fact, it happens to almost 50% of first marriages. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Divorce Happens, a podcast to educate, inspire, support, and yes, make you laugh through divorce and beyond so that you can start fresh on the next phase of your journey. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh.
You get divorced. You get divorced.
Getting divorced?
I'm getting a divorce.
You're getting a divorce.
Because she's getting a divorce.
So what if I get divorced?
Hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter. Because as we know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. And we're here with one of our friends and Fresh Starts experts, Dr. Joanna Hulton. Joanna, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I am a family therapist, and I have been working with families, children, and their parents for, oh my goodness, over 30 years. And I am happy to be here today because we have done one podcast and we started talking about divorce and the developmental issues that come up for the kids and for parents while they're trying to make this transition. So I'm happy to be back, and hopefully we can continue this conversation we started and I can give you even more information.
Absolutely. I am so happy when you said to me, bring me on more. Let's have real people questions. I was like, of course, you can come on as much as you want. Let's chat. So I meet with women and men, but a lot of women who are going through a divorce every day, and most of them are moms. And, it's no surprise that the first thing that comes to mind for them is what's going to happen with the children? How are they going to respond? So I happened to get a question. I'm going to read it and then we're going to talk about it from somebody that I met with. And she said, I'm in the middle of a divorce and I feel completely lost when it comes to parenting my two kids through this. They are 6 and 9, and I'm trying so hard to keep things stable and loving for them. But I'm not sure that I'm doing it right, quote unquote, if that makes sense. My ex and I don't have the most amicable relationship, and there's been a lot of tension. Some of it definitely shows up in front of the kids, even though I try not to let it. I find myself overcompensating, letting them sleep in my bed more often, saying yes to things I normally wouldn't, and just trying to make home feel safe even when I don't feel safe or certain myself. My 9-year-old has been having more outbursts lately, especially after transitions between two homes, and my 6-year-old has started saying he wishes everything could go back to normal. I don't know how to explain to them that this is the new normal, but I also don't want to burden them with adult things or make them feel like they have to take care of me. Do you have any advice on how to create emotional safety and structure when everything feels so up in the air? How do I talk to my kids about divorce in a way that's honest, but still age appropriate and comforting? And boy, Joanna, I feel like you could write a whole book on this.
Yes.
It's a lot here. So let's take it step by step. I mean, I guess where do we get started here? How do you talk to kids that age about divorce without having them worry about you in that conversation?
Okay, so this is a good place to start. And I try to explain to parents that I work with that children's behavior is very important to see as sort of an X-ray of what is going on with a parent. And because we're so connected to each other. And so that the parent and the child are really going to be experiencing some of the same emotions. And so we start from there. And we start with this mom, and we have to wonder about her feelings of safety as she is making this transition. And so when I heard that she is overcompensating, as she puts it, and that her son said something like, Mom, I wish we could have everything go back to normal.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought about was, I think he's saying, you're overcompensating. It's not normal. I'm not supposed to be sleeping in your bed.
Interesting.
You are not feeling safe. I am not feeling safe. So the first thing we do is we really try to talk to the kids about that, and that she can be honest. I was, maybe trying a little too hard to make you feel safe, and it's very safe to be in your own room. I'm gonna we're gonna tuck you in. I'm gonna come and I'm gonna check on you
Mm,
to make sure you're feeling safe. But we are going to talk about ways that we can stay safe as a family
right,
without, giving you everything you want,
right.
because I'm realizing that it might be making you feel more insecure
Oh,
rather than
interesting.
secure. So that
Wow.
would be the first thing we start with.
That's deep, Joanna. That's deep. I'm thinking about my own situation because I had a similar situation with my kids sleeping in my bed, and it
Hmm.
was driving me bonkers. I couldn't get sleep, and I had to put them in their room and I did some very gentle, repurposing,
Hmm.
moving them back into the room. But it was hard. And now that you're talking about that X-ray and the child parent relationship, that really does make sense. I didn't feel safe.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that's the first thing you have to look at when you are trying to understand these behaviors. Okay, how am I somehow feeling the same way? And that's a really good start. It really helps break things up very quickly in terms of, sorting things out. And also, we really don't want the kids to feel like they have to replace daddy.
Right.
And sometimes they get the wrong message. Like,
Mm,
oh boy, okay, well, dad's not here anymore. Mom might feel alone. Mom is scared. And so I think, and typically children won't say that, but
right.
what they do is they act it out and say, here's the x-ray. I'm really scared. I really need to be with you. Please let me sleep in your bed tonight.
Right.
And so, and there it is.
Right.
So, because they don't have the wherewithal to say, Mom, I think you're really scared and I need to take care of you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, yes. And where does, like, mom guilt come into all of this, Joanna?
Everywhere, always.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
can you give me a little bit
Yeah,
more?
like, I would imagine if a mom if a 6-year-old said, I'm scared, I wanna sleep with you," of course she's gonna say yes, right?
Mm,
There's, like, especially
mm-hmm.
going through a life transition like divorce.
Yes.
But nobody's gonna get sleep. It's disrupting the routine.
Mm-hmm.
What is a way that a mom or dad can not feel so much of that heavy guilt about, like, "Oh, I'm screwing all of this up and they just want me," but
Right.
it's I
Mm-hmm.
think what you said about, a child saying, "You're overcompensating, that's not normal," is really interesting. I don't think many people see it from that perspective.
Right. And I think to be able to say to the child that, you it's understandable that you're feeling unsafe and your room is very safe, and so let's go into your room and let's see how we can make it feel more safe.
Mm,
And just so you know, I'm right down the hall. If you need me, you can come get me. um, we can do certain rituals before we go to sleep, like story time and that, and I'm going to check on you later to make
right,
sure you are fine.
right, right.
And I think that really will help.
Yeah,
um,
I love that.
yeah.
It's a hard transition because
I,
everything in the house gets uprooted, right?
Right. And I think if you feel less guilty
Yeah.
and worried, again, that's going to translate to the child like, oh, I guess maybe I can feel less guilty and upset and less scared. If we
Mm,
go with my x-ray theory.
right, right, right. That makes total sense. So that being said, let's transition to the other child in this conversation, which is the 9-year-old is getting, I would assume, like, upset, crying, pushing back on having to transition between homes, which is really a huge life change for
Yes, it
children.
is.
So
Mhm.
how do we I don't know, incorporate this life change with as little issues as possible into our life as a divorced family?
So it must be super hard for kids to, well, I want to back up a little bit because I want to talk a little bit about the human development needs that we all share. And they start to develop in the first couple of years of life. And in the first year of life, basically babies are trying to figure out, is the world a safe place? When I'm hungry, do I get fed? When I cry, do I get picked up? The world is a safe place. And so that we know in this first year, with these experiences, bit by bit, we all start to feel a sense of secure base and safety. And then at around 1.5 or around when the child begins to walk away from the caregiver, it ushers in a whole brand new piece of development, which is, I want to go out there and I want to learn things. I want to do things. I want to make stuff happen. I'm going to take initiative and I am going to have agency. All of the kinds of things that we humans need when we go to school, later on when we go to work,
Right.
Even when we get divorced, we still have to be able to manage the secure base needs and the need for adventure. So you can imagine what kids are going through.
Right.
So their secure base is uprooted when they have to, leave the house, or when mom and dad are upset, or if they hear them, yelling and arguing.
Right.
So their secure base is very vulnerable. So sometimes it's very hard for them to get to the next state, the next piece of development, which is to have an adventure, to go out into the world, to walk away from mom and dad, to go down the hall and open the closet and look at the books inside or whatever, or go to school. So I think it's important for both parents to really get on board, because I'm assuming both parents want the best for their kids. So we go back and forth between secure base and adventure. That's a template we all have.
Right.
So you can imagine that when we get divorced, we really feel very vulnerable about our own secure base and our own sense of adventure and what's happening to us as things are really coming apart. The secure base that we've built is over. And it has to be reconfigured, right?
Right.
And then when we can do that, we feel free enough to go out in the world and get things done and have another life and all of that. So all that's going on for the parents, and imagine for the kids as well.
Yeah.
So parents need to come together and say, okay, we have to remember that children have to have experiences with secure base and a need to be taking an adventure, having an adventure, going out into the world.
Right.
And they need to be doing that with both of us. What I've heard over the years is that sometimes it'll fall into, well, mommy's secure base and daddy is adventure. Right. And I hear this old, oh yeah, the dad, he just plays and, he buys some things. And that's probably not healthy, because it really doesn't help children sort of integrate those two things that we need to go back and forth between adventure and secure base. But they need to do it in each environment and not get split up. Otherwise, they end up just feeling insecure, because when they're at home with the secure base parent, they can only do secure base things.
Right.
And then they have to wait until they get to the other environment.
Right.
And that's probably a very good reason why this child is having such trouble. And all the kids that I talk to, it's like, oh, now I have to change my ways. I have to come home and I have to behave differently. And, so if parents can come together and say, okay, so each of us is going to have our own environment. And in those environments, each child is going to experience secure base and adventure. And how do we do that? Now, secure base might include tradition, custom, rules and regulations. This is the way we do things around here. And if we do it this way, we're all in this very safe environment, so that you can go to school, so you can take initiative, so you can try out for a club that you want to be in at school or whatever. And that's really an important piece. But just to have to wait to go to your other parent to have those needs met gets really confusing for kids. And they
Yeah.
really start, and then they act out.
Wow, that is mind-blowing information. Truly. I think, like, if you're listening to this, go back and listen to that whole part again, because I think that that's really, really important. It's almost like what I was thinking while you were saying that. It's like we we have to balance that secure base and the adventure as babies, right? And then as toddlers, it's almost like when you have children and you get divorced, like the whole family has to have a rebirth,
Yeah.
right? And like has to grow again, like a newborn toddler
Mhm.
stage. It's fascinating.
Yes, and we really all have this, need to go back and forth,
Mhm.
between adventure and secure base. And if you think about those days when maybe you were, trying something brand new
Mhm.
and you had to go up to a meeting and, you did really well, and then afterwards you might go home and just sort of nestle in and say, "Oh, this is my secure base. This is where I can rest and renew and get ready for my next adventure."
Right.
And it never ends. It's throughout a
Mm.
lifespan. And so we have to go back and forth between those two things. And so you can imagine if it's hard for adults to do that.
Mm.
Can you imagine how it is for the children,
Right.
right? But we can do something about this. First just comes understanding.
Right.
And because there are too many people who rely on conventional wisdom
Mhm.
when stuff happens
Right.
and things that were taught to us, previous generations
Right.
and
Right.
we kind of inherited. And there's so much good information out there.
Yeah, there is.
So,
Your work is definitely part of that. I highly, highly recommend your book, Parent Fatigue Syndrome, which,
yes, thank
as
you.
you're talking about this, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, no wonder parents are so exhausted and burnt out from, especially divorced parents. And I'm thinking, even like parents that have most of the custody or, spend more time with the kids, they're having to cultivate this new sense of secure base adventure alone, for the children. And that's a lot to do.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Again, that's why if it's possible to have the two parents
Yeah.
have a conversation about this, in my practice, we'll have two parents come in and we'll
Yeah.
talk about it and
Yep.
say, okay, so how can each of us contribute and
Mm,
make sure it doesn't become either or,
right.
yeah,
And it has to come from you, right? Like the parent has to come from the parent, right? There's a big difference between saying you guys are going to your dad's house this weekend and I think you're going to have a great time, or oh, your dad's picking you up, right?
right.
That's going to reflect onto the children.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because if people can go back to our first podcast,
Yep.
I talk a little bit about how all children are part mom and part dad.
Mhm.
And so that if the parents are very angry with each other, then the
Right.
child will, let's say those two kids,
Yep.
if that dad, let's just for example, doesn't really like mom very much, and
Right.
let's face it, that can happen, and
Mm.
that's where we get divorced.
Yep.
And so the kids go to dads, but they have to hold back a big part of themselves, the mommy part.
Yep.
I can't be mommy. I can't think about mommy. I can't act like mommy.
Right.
And so they have to put that part of the self away.
Mm.
And if that's not, I mean, that can cause so much anxiety for
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah. That's abandonment,
Imagine.
right?
And then,
Abandonment of
yeah,
self. Yeah.
yeah, exact. That's a very good way to put it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's so much to unpack here, Joanna. I could literally talk to you forever. This was incredibly, literally mind blowing is just the word that comes to mind for this. And I appreciate all of your insights. If you have a question for Joanna, please email me. We will get
Yes.
it answered. We'll talk about it. But I highly recommend going and reading Parent Fatigue Syndrome, which we will link,
Thank you.
and checking out Joanna and all of her work. And Joanna, before we let you go, can you tell us a little bit about the Children's Peace Initiative that you're working on?
The Children's Peace Initiative is a forum for parents and teachers and kids, and it really is. It's a volunteer situation where all the team members come together with they different experts, and they really help me gather information, and so that and the website is growing very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wish that people would just take a look at it to see what we have to offer. And it's growing. And in fact, we will be having our own podcast.
Yep.
That will be coming up. And the name of that podcast is going to be Seen and Heard.
Love it.
Because we really feel like all people, not just kids, but all of us need to be seen and heard. And so that is something that I am working on with my team, and we're getting really excited about it. And maybe the next time we speak, I can even tell you more.
We would love that. Well, thank you as always, Joanna. This was truly insightful. I feel like I heal a little bit of me every time I talk to you. So
Thank
I
you.
just appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Divorce Happens is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the only divorce registry platform for everything you need to begin again, including home items, hype team, and everything in between. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh. We're here to support you before, during, and after divorce. Head to freshstartsregistry.com for more info.